Most teams I've worked with have some version of the same problem. Releases are stressful. There's always something that wasn't quite ready, and decisions get made under pressure because the deadline is already on top of you. I got a close look at the other side of that when I was a program manager at Apple, where I worked with DevOps teams that were shipping across macOS, mobile, and web simultaneously, at scale, and with a level of coordination that most teams never get to see. And the contrast is really striking. Today, I want to walk you through what separates those teams from the ones that are always scrambling, and what you can actually take from it, whether you work in tech or not. So today, we're going to take a look at two things: continuous delivery and DevOps. So let's start with continuous delivery, or CD. The core idea here is that your work should always be in a state where it could ship. Not after a big review cycle or a final approval marathon, but at any point along the way. In software, continuous delivery means every small change a developer makes gets automatically tested and staged so the team can push it to live whenever they need to. There's no big bang release where everything piles up and something inevitably breaks. The reason that this matters for project managers is that most teams handle deliverables the opposite way, where work gets batched up in big silos and reviewed in one giant batch near the end, and then you find out half of it needs rework. Well, CD is really a response to that pattern, where small, frequent, validated releases are lower risk than large, infrequent ones. Think of a newsletter team. Instead of writing 10 articles and releasing them all at once, a CD mindset means publishing one article when it's ready, getting reader feedback, and then using that to improve the next one. This means smaller batches, faster feedback will always equal less waste. In practice, CD pipelines are built on source control tools like GitHub or GitLab. Think of them as the version history for every piece of work moving through your pipeline. Nothing gets lost, nothing gets overwritten, and you always know what changed and when. That audit trail is what makes releasing with confidence even possible. So here's your practical takeaway for continuous delivery. Break out your deliverables into smaller chunks that can be reviewed and approved independently. Don't wait until the end of the sprint to get sign-off. Build miniature checkpoints throughout the entire sprint. So let's talk about DevOps. And I want to be clear up front that even though this has its origins in software, it's not necessarily a tech thing. DevOps stands for development and operations. Historically, dev teams built software and operations teams ran them, and they barely talked with each other. So DevOps was the movement that said that these two groups need to share goals and share tools and share accountability. I managed 2 DevOps teams at a health startup a few years ago, and what stood out to me was how much of the work was really just about communication and alignment, making sure engineering and operations were looking at the same picture and working toward the same definition of done. The technical side does matter, but the collaboration piece is really where teams actually struggle the most. So you might be wondering what this has to do with you if you're not in a technical role. Most teams have their own version of this divide though. Maybe it's the marketing team creating a campaign and the sales team having to execute it with no overlap during the planning phase. Maybe it's the project team designing the process and the operations team running it. And the design doesn't quite hold up in practice. Well, DevOps really is just a name for closing the gap between those different groups of people who build and those who deliver. Teams that do this well tend to share tools across both sides. Things like Jira and Slack are the most common examples because when both teams are looking at the same board and communicating in the same channel, the silo naturally breaks down on its own. And visibility does a lot of the heavy lifting here. Here's your practical tip for this DevOps point. In your next project, do a simple handoff audit. Map out every place where work crosses from one team to another. Those are your risk points. Then ask what one thing you could do to smooth out that transition. Maybe a shared doc, a standing sync, maybe a shared definition of done will take care of it for you. Here are 3 things that you can actually do this week which require no coding. And they're really simple. First, automate as much of the repetitive stuff as you can. CD is built on automation. In software, tools like GitHub Actions or Jenkins automatically run tests and trigger builds the moment code is committed, so no one has to babysit the process. In your world as a project manager, the equivalent might be approval workflows like in Monday.com or Asana, or templated reports that populate themselves, or Slack automations that notify the right person at the right time. The underlying logic is still the same. Every manual, repetitive task is a delay and therefore a risk. Find one thing you do every week by hand and figure out how to automate it. Second, create a definition of ready and a definition of done. One of the most practical wins from DevOps culture is shared standards. Before any work starts, everyone has to agree on what their ready to begin looks like. And before it ships, everyone has to agree on what definition of done is. This eliminates the awkward conversations of, wait, I thought you were handling that, or you were handling that. Get your team together this week and write both of those definitions out for your current project. Third, build a faster feedback loop. Continuous delivery works because teams get feedback quickly. On the technical side, monitoring tools like Grafana or New Relic watch the system constantly and surface problems before users ever notice them. You want the same thing for your projects. A standing pulse on project health rather than a post-mortem after something already went wrong. In practice, that means shorter review cycles. Instead of a monthly status report, try a weekly 10-minute asynchronous update. Instead of a quarterly stakeholder review, maybe try bi-weekly check-ins. The faster you get that signal, the sooner you can course correct. Now, before we close, I want to address something that I actually hear fairly often, that continuous delivery and DevOps are only relevant for tech companies. And yes, it makes a lot of sense in that industry. But if you've been listening for the last few minutes, you know that that's not accurate. The principles behind them, the small batches, the automation, the breaking down silos, the fast feedback, all apply to any team delivering any kind of work in any industry. Whether you're a marketing agency, a construction firm, a hospital operations team, it doesn't matter. Now, your tools might look different, but they're still solving the same problems. And if you're a project manager, your Monday.com workflow and your team's GitHub actions are both trying to eliminate manual handoffs and keep work moving without someone having to chase it down. The tools will change, but the goal doesn't. So it all really comes down to this. The best teams don't save everything up for one big release moment. They build systems that let them ship with confidence on a regular basis. And continuous delivery and DevOps give you the framework for thinking about that. So next week, we're going way bigger. We're going to take a look at how to scale Agile across an entire organization using the Scaled Agile Framework, or SAFe. So if you're working in a larger company, this one is really worth paying attention to. Hey, thanks for being with us here today. Hit like, subscribe, maybe comment below on the biggest silo problem in your current team, and let's see if we can't figure that out together. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.